Hola amigos! Today's topic was selected by you guys in the last poll, and I'm happy to oblige. Let's talk about how to ride a motorcycle in the rain. Riding in the rain can be a little bit intimidating in the beginning, and it is something each rider have to do eventually. So yes, it's a good topic to cover. This video is not just a heap of random advices, it has a structure to it. The whole task of riding in the rain is divided to 4 smaller subtasks, which we can easily solve separately. Systematic approach is always the best approach. Let's start with the most obvious problem of riding in the rain: the lack of grip. The pavement is wet and cold, which means our tires have much less grip than normally. This fact alone can be pretty scary. A lot of riders feel like their tires can slip at any moment, so they become really stiff and tense on the bike, which then makes the motorcycle behave twitchy and unstable. So the rider becomes even more tense and so on, until it becomes a perpetual increase of stiffness. Stop it! There is no need for that. Actually, the wet pavement itself is not that bad. Yes, it's worse than a clean dry tarmac, but it still gives us enough grip to ride safely. We obviously have to ride a bit slower and keep bigger following distance to allow for slower, smoother braking and acceleration, but we still can lean, brake and accelerate, just not as much as we can do it on dry surface. So we should not stiffen up in constant fear of losing the grip and sliding. What we should do instead is to make the most use of grip available. How to do that? First, we need to relax and remember that the front wheel stabilizes the bike. Our hands and arms should be loose and relaxed, allowing the handlebars to move. This self-steering of the front wheel doesn't change in the rain. Second thing we need to do is to make sure we have good tires with enough tread on them, and that they have the right pressure. Worn tread and low pressure drastically reduce the amount of grip in the rain. The tire simply can't evacuate water fast enough from the contact patch. This is one of many reasons to check our tire pressure and tread wear regularly. It makes a really big difference. Next thing which we can do to improve our grip is to wait about 20 or so minutes after it just started raining. In these first 20 minutes of rain, most of the dust, traces of oil and other stuff which is being accumulated on the road surface gets washed away. The road becomes cleaner and starts to provide better grip. So if you got caught in the rain and you have an option to stop somewhere and wait for a bit, do it. And last and probably the most important thing which we can do in any low grip situation, rain included, is to be smooth on controls. This is one of the reasons we did all this advanced training stuff with throttle exercises, brake exercises and lean angles. This was to prepare ourselves to be really smooth and precise with our controls, throttle, steering, braking, etc. Being relaxed, smooth on controls and having good tires works like a charm. Here is a nice example. People usually really like this demonstration. Here I'm going through a deep puddle of water on a good lean angle with zero issues. There is no special secret here, all I'm doing is being smooth. Leaning slowly, braking slowly and accelerating slowly. That's it. Since we already started watching Japanese police training, here's another good example. You see, they are doing very good. Nice cornering, decent lean angles, all as long as they are smooth on controls. As soon as they give throttle too fast, the bike decides to have a quick nap. Smooth, slow controls is something we as riders should purposefully exercise from time to time. Yes, there are rain modes and stuff on modern bikes, or we can use poor man's rain mode, riding on one gear higher than usual to make throttle less responsive. But those are crutches, which work to a degree but not always. So be sure to grab my training routine course and go through all exercises there. You wouldn't believe how much smoother and more confident you will become. Alright, we learned that less grip on wet pavement is not really a huge deal, and it can be easily managed. There is a more serious issue though – surface hazards. Wet tarmac itself is not really a big problem, it's not that slippery. However, there is a lot of stuff on the road which, when it becomes wet, becomes really slick, sometimes literally like ice. The main approach for this problem is not some special riding technique, which magically gives us all traction back and allow us to ride on mud like on pavement. The main strategy for surface hazards is to spot them well in advance and either avoid them altogether, or if they are unavoidable, ride over them on a straight line, with constant speed, with no braking or acceleration. When it's raining, obviously, we have less visibility, which means we simply have to slow down to give ourselves more time to see the road ahead and act accordingly. Here is, by the way, when the fisherman vision technique will be useful. I have a separate video about it, so check it out later if you haven't yet. So, when it's raining, we are riding slower than usual and looking out for road hazards. What exactly we are looking for? The easiest to spot is paint. Painted lines, arrows, crosswalks, etc. When wet, road paint becomes pretty slippery. Fortunately, paint is very easy to spot in advance. Lines and arrows are pretty easy to avoid. We don't need to swerve around them or anything crazy like that. Usually just going a little more to the left or a little more to the right is enough. And in case if the paint is hard to avoid, like if it's a crosswalk, we should just ride over it on upright bike and constant speed, without braking or accelerating. Next type of surface hazards, which are also usually easy to spot, are various metallic, plastic and wooden surfaces. Gender-neutral person hall covers, steel road plates, metal grid, expanders, rails, plastic or wooden rail aprons, stuff like that. Procedure with them is similar to lines. Try to avoid them, and if it is not possible, ride over them on upright bike on constant speed. Also, if it has height, like for example this steel plate is higher than the rest of the pavement, try to cross the edge at perpendicular angle. One more type of things to beware are loose surfaces. Wet sand, mud, leaves and various debris like carton boxes, pieces of car plastic, truck tires, squashed aluminum cans, bottles and so on. That stuff when wet also becomes slippery. And just like in previous examples, we should either try to avoid these surfaces or ride over them on a straight bike with constant speed. Attention to general road situation sometimes helps find these road surfaces in advance. For example, if you see some kind of construction ahead of you, chances are trucks are entering and exiting this construction site, bringing mud on the road. Or if you see a gas station, there is a high chance of spilled diesel nearby. Riding in tracks of cars also can help sometimes. Car tires push all the dirt and garbage away, so it's much more of a chance to find it on the side of the road than in car tracks. But with car tracks, you also should be careful, because sometimes when the pavement quality is poor, car tracks turn into ruts and start collecting standing water. So pay attention to that. To avoid all kinds of surface hazards, reduce your speed to give yourself some extra reaction time. Look far ahead and pay attention to any change of color or texture of pavement. This texture or color change may simply mean newer or older tarmac, but sometimes it means other things, like tar snakes, diesel spills or pools of standing water. By the way, be careful with them. Who knows what waits you in the deep? But seriously, there can be potholes, there can be extremely slippery, greasy mud on the bottom, or there literally can be a bottomless pit to hell, which is not often, but it happens. So, if you have to ride over such a pool of water, either let a car go in front of you and follow its tracks, or ride really slowly. Riding over standing water at high speed is also dangerous because of aquaplaning. Aquaplaning is a phenomenon which happens when a tire can't evacuate water from contact patch fast enough, and the wheel effectively starts to glide over the surface of water instead of rolling on pavement. Since motorcycle tires are narrower than car tires, motorcycles usually have less chance of aquaplaning, but it still can happen. That's why pools of standing water should be avoided. Let's move on to the next big issue with rainy weather – visibility. By now you already noticed I talked a lot about vision. We should look at the road surface, look at painted lines, manholes, sand, mud, leaves, water pools, etc. And don't forget about cars, pedestrians, animals and everything else what we are usually looking at. Look at this, look at that, look. But it is not that easy to do when it rains, right? There are water droplets on the visor and water mist in the air, which blocks our vision. Every time we exhale, the visor fogs up, and all the surface hazards are much more difficult to spot when the road is wet. Sure, we will never be able to see as good in the rain as we do in clear weather, but there are a couple of things which you can do to prepare yourself a bit more. First, if you are using tinted visor, remember to bring clear one with you if you go out riding for more than a couple of hours. It's usually much darker when it rains, and tinted visor doesn't help. Next thing which is just awesome is a pin lock. Pin lock is a thin piece of clear plastic which goes on the inner side of face shield and makes a thin air insulation layer, which prevents water vapor from condensing and fogging up the visor. Pin lock is a very nice thing to have, otherwise you'll have to ride with crack-open visor. Another problem is rain itself, which collects on outer surface of the face shield. When we go at speed, it is not a big problem. We simply can briefly turn our head left and right, and oncoming wind blows water droplets away. On slow speed it doesn't happen. We either have to wipe the visor with a rag or our glove, or we can use special wiper on a glove, which looks like that. That's the best option. It wipes visor clear and doesn't smear dirt, reducing our vision. And again, probably the best thing which we can do for visibility is reduce our speed and keep more following distance, which means less water spray on our visor and more time to react. And last thing which I want to bring up today is cooling effect of the rain. Being wet and cold on the bike and feeling miserable is bad enough by itself. It distracts the rider, which certainly doesn't increase safety. But it's not that bad as long as it takes short periods of time. We can go for a ride for an hour, get wet in the rain and return home in half an hour, no big deal. But if we are caught in the rain further from home, like more than a couple of hours away, things become nasty pretty quick. Getting wet is not a problem here, getting cold is. When our clothes become wet, the water starts to evaporate from it, taking energy away from our body. This is called evaporative cooling. And on a bike, our body cools down extremely fast because we are moving through the air, and this way water evaporates very fast. Even when the air temperature is rather warm, our body still cools down quite fast, easily enough to suffer from hypothermia. In this state, human can't function properly. It can't think straight, can't assess the road situation, and loses all the fine motorics in hands and arms, which are detrimental for riding a motorcycle. So if you don't want to receive Darwin Award for freezing yourself to death on a warm but rainy summer day, you need to stick to one very simple rule. Always bring your rain suit with you when you are going away far. Like if you are planning to go further than 100 kilometers from home, either put on your special tailored Gore-Tex Aerostitch suit if you have one, or at least bring your simple rain suit with you, even if it's warm and sunny day. Don't put it on, just have it with you. 9 out of 10 times you will not need it, but that one time you will sure be glad you brought it with you. Staying warm enough on a bike is incredibly important thing. And if you are planning to ride in the rain anyway, just put on your best rain gear and maybe put on additional layer for extra warm. In this particular case, it's better to be little extra hot than too cold. And that is pretty much it. This video ended up rather long, but I used a systematic approach and tried to cover everything in detail, so I hope this video was useful. And if you like this format when you give me topics for videos, suggest your topic in comment section. We will again make a poll and do a new video. I personally really like this interaction with you guys and hope you like it too. Alright, as usual, thank you for watching and have a great and wonderful day. Bye!